A mother, a wife living in her beautiful home, then an intruder who breaks in and shoots her husband dead. A horror she tried to shield her little girl from, who was sleeping in a nearby room. But was she shielding everyone from what really happened? Matt Gutman with the tapes tonight, finding the truth right between the lies.
Drill a well in Keller, Texas. You don't get crude, you get cash. And 40-year-old Gregg Williams was rolling in it, a self-made businessman getting rich with his computer security company. Now sharing a little palace on the prairie with his wife, 42-year-old Michele, and her 4-year-old daughter, Michele. Gregg and Michele both twice divorced, but it felt like this third marriage would be the charm. And Michele's grown sons from previous relationships, Lee and Andrew O'Brien, say her marriage to Gregg was a fairy tale.
He always treated her like a queen. Anything she wanted, she got.
The family renting a McMansion with a pool out back, his and her Mercedes in the garage.
Money. He's got the money. He's got the party lifestyle. He's accomplished, and he's head over heels for her.
Quite a change for the woman who'd struggled as a teen mom to raise 3 kids, living hand to mouth.
We were living in motel rooms if we could, bouncing around, couch surfing.
Michele, now the kind of bride who shows a little leg. Gregg, the kind of guy who buys his wife a yogurt shop to keep her busy. Perfect, what with her new taste for the sweet life. Gregg spending his spare time on alpha male activities, karate chopping, cinder blocks, and bodybuilding.
He was like a frat boy, like literally through and through. He was a jock, but a genius at the same time.
But one October night, the cowboy Camelot came to an end with a single gunshot.
Netcom 911, where is the emergency?
That's Michele Williams calling for help. Gregg has been shot.
Oh my God,
This is the actual dash cam video from some of the first officers arriving on the scene when they discover Michele distraught with a nasty goose egg on her cheek.
Who else is in the house?
My 4-year-old and my husband.
Your 4-year-old and the husband.
Hoping to shed more light on the attack, police bring Michele, their only witness, down to the station. Then, as a sympathetic officer holds her hand, Michele tells Sergeant John McGrew an unbelievable story.
Walk me through the story that she told you.
She was asleep, woke up by an intruder.
Michele says she woke up as an intruder in black was breaking in through the back door. The bandit passed right by 4-year-old Michele, asleep on the living room couch, and approached the bedroom. There he ran into Michele and whacked her, knocking her out.
She was struck by an unknown object.
Police later find a wrench at the scene, the right size to plant that painful bump on her cheek.
That's what actually kind of
It knocked me out.
Michele says she's still groggy when she sees the man in black standing over Gregg. There is a gunshot, and the intruder disappears through a back door.
I screamed and I ran over to Gregg and I reached for him. I grabbed a hold of his hand and I felt blood running down the side.
Gregg has been shot once in the head. And eventually, there in the interview room, Sergeant McGrew informs Michele her husband is dead.
There's not much I can say in this. Gregg's deceased. Okay.
The widow Williams is inconsolable.
Now back to that developing story in Keller.
This story catches the eye of the media,
The victim's wife called 911.
including TV's queen of crime, Nancy Grace.
Cops find Daddy shot dead in his own bed.
Who was the intruder in black who shot Gregg? Turns out there is no shortage of suspects because Gregg's gilded life had a gritty side.
He had an edge to him. He rubbed people the wrong way.
There's drug dealers and bad people. He's kind of like a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde.
Michele, trying to help identify that killer in black, mentions others police might want to talk to, including Gregg's ex-wife, Kathy Williams.
Him and his ex-wife fight a lot.
She doesn't mention the 2 men in the world who may have disliked Gregg the most. His stepsons, Army vets Andrew and Lee O'Brien.
How much did you not like him?
I hated him. I don't throw that word around lightly, but I literally hated him.
As sometimes happens, the stepchildren felt unwanted and unwelcome by their mother's new husband.
Was there ever a point that you were happy that he was dead?
Yes, immediately. When They told me he was dead. I was like, cool, whatever. How's Mom?
Both you and your brother openly say you despised Gregg. Did you have anything to do with his murder?
No.
But police are beginning to wonder whether there was an intruder at all. Keller Police Captain Brenda Slovak, the lead investigator, drives us to the big house on Jacob Avenue and back to the night of the shooting.
And from right here, you could see the body.
Correct. I could see him in the bed.
But in that bedroom, there is not a single sign of a struggle. And in a house loaded with valuables and $20,000 in cash, the killer takes nothing and leaves nothing. Did you ever find fibers or any DNA evidence or any other kind of evidence of an intruder?
No.
So what? You have an unknown assailant break into his home, shoot him dead, and leave for what?
And then police practically trip over the most important evidence in the case. Right here in these crime scene photos. The murder weapon, the very recently smoking gun, Gregg's gun. Yep, shot with his own gun.
If someone's going to come into your home and try and do you some harm, normally you would bring your own gun.
And right next to the gun, the fired shell casing and the wrench possibly used to hit Michele. Arranged neat as a pawn shop showcase.
You saw this picture. What was the first thing that went through your mind?
Staged. Staged.
When you were sitting across from her, did you ever think that this woman is lying to me?
Oh, yes, sir.
Back at the police station, a now suspicious Sergeant McGrew tells Michele the crime scene suggests only two possibilities. Either she shot Gregg, or Gregg shot himself.
I did not hurt my husband, and he did not hurt himself. There was a man in my house.
She denies it no fewer than 6 times until this moment.
If he self-inflicted it, you need to tell me. I mean, this is it. I don't, we're getting wits end. You've got to be honest with me, Michele. If he did it and you covered it up, just tell me.
He did.
Huh?
He did.
She said he did it.
He did it.
Yeah.
She immediately folds and went, okay, you got me. He shot himself.
Michele admits she's told a pack of lies and now offers a second version of Gregg's death. Michele now says she was sleeping on the couch with 4-year-old Michele. She hears the gunshot and goes into the bedroom to find Gregg had shot himself. She cleaned it all up and arranged things to look like a home invasion.
I knew I had to make it look as if it was a burglary.
And get this, to really sell the story, Michele says she hit herself in the face with that wrench.
I went like that thinking I'll just have a little bruise, and that really backfired bad.
Michele says she only wanted to protect their 4-year-old daughter Michele and Gregg's reputation. After spending 5 hours in the interrogation room, police finally release Michele, who soon finds consolation in comfort food.
The very morning after, Michele Williams goes out to breakfast to IHOP and basically orders the lumberjack breakfast. She's not worried about her dead husband at all. She's living it up. Sausage, pancakes, eggs, the work.
But police are finding Michele's stories hard to swallow. They have more questions than ever about the night Gregg died. Like, how did 4-year-old Michele sleep through a shooting in the next room?
And somehow Michele, their daughter, slept through it all. How was that possible?
Could clues from a little girl help unravel the mystery of her father's death? A curious feature story on the website, the Fort Worth, Texas newspaper, about a new kettlebell workout club. The owner is one Shelley Williams, who may look familiar because at the time, she's the most infamous widow in Texas. Her husband Gregg shot in the head in their king-size bed in their king-size house.
3, 2.
But now, less than a year after cremating her husband, Michele is the very picture of a merry widow.
It's very upbeat, it's fast, everyone really has a good time with it.
Also having a good time, Michele's employee, Gene Wallace.
You're in a group atmosphere, so it pushes you more than you can push yourself.
Could call him an employee with benefits. A dozen years younger than Michele, they're now a couple. Much has happened since that interrogation room where Michele told 2 different stories about how her husband wound up with a bullet in his head. First, she said it was murder, then suicide. But police have been weighing the evidence. Based on the angle of the gunshot wound and other forensics, the medical examiner eliminated suicide and ruled Gregg Williams' death a homicide. And remember, the crime scene showed no sign of an intruder.
Crime scenes don't lie, people do.
But something else bothered police, how that little girl, Gregg and Michele's daughter Michele, slept right through a shooting in the next room.
I think it's a reasonable possibility that children's Tylenol or something else was administered to the child.
Some sort of drug to make her sleep.
Yeah.
Police concluded only one person could have shot Gregg, his own wife, Michele Williams. The motive? Insurance that would pay out the better part of $1 million. That sobbing in the interrogation room when the cops told her Gregg was dead? Crocodile tears. She was arrested and charged with murder. But Michele doesn't sweat the small stuff. Soon, out on bail, there she is, swinging kettlebells with her new boyfriend. Her mind was also getting a workout. She tells her son, Andrew O'Brien, it really was murder. What's more, now she wonders whether the killer might be her own son, Andrew's brother, Lee.
She asked me, she said, "Do you think your brother could have done it?" And she asked me if her own son could have killed Gregg.
She had to plant a reasonable doubt that someone else could have been there that night. Someone else could have squeezed that trigger.
By pinning it on you?
Yes.
But police say Lee and Andrew O'Brien both have strong alibis. The brothers say they began to realize that Mommy Dearest might be a monster.
She doesn't even know what reality is anymore. She's been lying so long, and I think that somewhere along the way, reality left. And so she just kept going. She knew nothing else. Lie after lie.
They also remember how vengeful she could be if she thought a man was mistreating her.
She would, what I call, punish them. Kill dogs, attempt to kill dogs, poison dogs. And if someone would have like a saltwater fish tank, then she would pour Ajax in there or Drano and kill all these fish.
In Texas, a murder charge could land you on death row, but not Michele. Her luck holds out.
I don't know how she managed to do it, but Michele Williams managed to finagle a plea deal out of the state.
Prosecutors say Michele cleaned the crime scene so well, they didn't have much of a case.
This is a circumstantial evidence case, there's no doubt about it. Of course, not in small measure because she had altered the crime scene.
The deal, announced in a press release, requires Michele to plead guilty, not to the murder charge in the indictment, but tampering with evidence and deadly conduct. Instead of death, the recommended sentence will be just 18 years. In a jailhouse interview, Michele seems pleased with her bargain.
With a plea deal, I'm looking at a couple of years before I'm out for parole. So I'm actually, if you could say, looking forward to getting the sentencing over with so I can start moving towards the end of this hell.
But before she can be sentenced, Michele has another surprise.
She's pregnant, just before sentencing. And not only is she pregnant, she's pregnant with twins.
Sentencing was deferred until after Michele's due date. But prosecutors say the pregnancy turns out to be another lie to delay prison. The conception was an immaculate deception. But then, Michele makes the mistake of a lifetime. She grants an interview to the national TV crime show 48 Hours.
Did you murder your husband, Gregg?
No, I did not.
There she goes again. Michele flip-flops on her story. She tells 48 Hours she's an innocent woman. And she pulls an old, tried and untrue story out of mothballs. The man in black did it.
There was an intruder in the house, and that person killed my husband.
So she had already pled guilty, and then she gets on national television and says, well, what I really meant was I'm not guilty. What I really meant is an intruder came in. I really meant that I have a good idea who the intruder was.
It doesn't play well with the judge.
If this story's true, this lady needs a trial.
He revokes the plea deal and orders Michele to stand trial for murder. The woman accused of shooting her husband in the head just shot herself in the foot.
You have a Fifth Amendment right to remain silent for a reason. Our U.S. Constitution protects you from the actions of the state. What the U.S. Constitution cannot protect you from is yourself.
At the Tarrant County Courthouse in Fort Worth, Texas, it's finally time for truth and consequences. Michele Williams is on trial for the murder of her husband, Gregg.
An elaborate cover-up. This story continues to evolve.
The media following every twist and turn in the murder case.
The motive was money. Tried and true, age-old money.
A fraud examiner says the Williams finances were mismanaged.
Lots of problems here, right?
They tended to be living beyond their means.
They both had their respective jobs in this case. His job was to make money, and her job was to spend money. And they were both very good at their jobs.
And prosecutors lay out their theory. Gregg and Michele fought over money that night. Gregg hit Michele or threw something, causing that goose egg on her cheek.
It's our suspicion that this is an injury that was caused in the fracas with her husband earlier in the evening that led to his demise.
Provoked, Michele enacted a plan that would get her revenge and riches. Prosecutors say after Gregg fell asleep, Michele shot him in the head with his own gun, then arranging the evidence and cleaning up the crime scene to look like the killer was an intruder. Michele brought to tears as gruesome photos of her dead husband are shown. Prosecutors are so successful in painting Michele as a pants-on-fire caliber liar.
She lied about it, she lied about it, and when she finished lying about it, she kept on lying about it.
Her defense attorneys are forced to make a startling admission in open court.
Probably at this point, you have made up your mind, and rightly so, that Michele, she lies.
But the most devastating witness to take the stand,
it's her own son, her own adult son. It's Andrew O'Brien.
He testifies his mother had concocted yet another whopper to save herself. She asked him to set up Gregg's ex-wife, Kathy Williams, as the killer.
Michele asked me to call some friends and have them frame Kathy. She said, I need you to call a friend, tell them go to Walmart, buy an extra large sweater, take that sweater out to the woods somewhere, fire a pistol so that the gunpowder gets on it.
She asked him to plant that sweater in Kathy's car where police would find it.
You were brought up to the witness stand to testify about your mother.
Mm-hmm.
How did you feel?
God, that was probably the worst feeling I've ever had. When they asked me to point to Michele Williams, I could not make eye contact.
As the defense presents its case, Michele Williams' court-appointed attorneys say Gregg was actually worth more to her alive.
Gregg was Michele's golden goose. He brought in over $500,000 in 2010 and over $800,000 in 2011. So what was her motive?
So how did he die? They go with Michele's story number 2. Remember, that was the suicide theory.
Gregg took his own life. That's what the physical evidence supports.
What do we know about Gregg Williams? We know that he was competent in handling a firearm. We know that he was using steroids.
Michele's attorneys argue Gregg was driven to suicide by a plague of problems. Money trouble, issues with his teenage daughter from a previous marriage, and the recent suicide of a close friend. According to Gregg's mother, nonsense. She says he was loving life.
He was very happy and bubbly and telling me all about the plans he had for the new house they were buying.
It was not a contact wound.
And prosecutors question whether suicide was even physically possible. Crucially, a gun expert testifies Gregg was not, as you might expect in a suicide, shot at close range.
The muzzle of the firearm was further than 6 inches and closer than 24 inches.
This is 24 inches.
Prosecutors demonstrate the acrobatics required to have pulled the trigger from that distance.
Does it make any sense to you at all that somebody would lay back in their bed and hold this gun 11 inches away from their own head and fire into their head?
How do you get your hand to do that? How do you cock your wrist to do this?
The prosecution seemed very convincing. People who commit suicide don't do it that way.
He was a bodybuilder. I'm sure this was a pretty common stance for him. So it wouldn't be It's not far-fetched that he would have just done this.
Another problem with the suicide theory pointed out to us at the crime scene. Although Gregg's left hand is in view, his right hand, his shooting hand, was tucked under the covers.
So he would have had to have shot himself and then put his hand under the comfort.
Correct.
In their final defense of the suicide theory, Michele's attorneys try to explain why she concocted that intruder story and staged the crime scene.
She's not a career criminal, ladies and gentlemen. This is not something she had time to think about. She panicked. She was working, like I said, to protect her baby girl, Michele, who was in the other room.
She has tried to pull the wool over the eyes of family and friends and police and prosecutors and courts, the media, the community, and ultimately you. Don't let her get away with it.
After all of Michele's Pinocchio moments, the intruder in black, the suicide theory, the imaginary twins, the jury comes back and hits Michele right between the lies.
Ms. Williams, if you would stand, please. The verdict says we, the jury, find the defendant, Michele Marie Williams, guilty of the offense of murder as charged in the indictment.
Michele Williams, who had once been offered a plea deal of 18 years, is now sentenced to 60.
Do you think she could have gotten away with it?
I think she could have gotten away with it. If she had come up with the suicide story and stuck with the suicide story, she could have gotten away with it.
What do you think was the one thing that kept her away from freedom?
The fact that she couldn't keep her mouth shut.
Instead, Michele is now serving what amounts to a life sentence. It's little solace for Andrew, who already considers his mother dead to him.
Would you say you have a mother?
No, I don't like to even consider her my mother. I had someone who gave birth to me, and that's it.
But he acknowledges that his twisted relationship with his mendacious mother has given him at least some direction.
She taught me exactly what not to do in life, and I've learned pretty well from that.
So you learned from example from her.
Right.
What not to do.
Exactly. And that's what I focus on, my family and my kids. And giving them everything I didn't have.
So what do you think about that mom asking her own adult son to pin this on someone else? Matt Gutman is live tweeting along with the rest of us tonight. Let us know. Use the hashtag ABC2020.